Hey guys, welcome back to Remove Before Race. I'm your host Raz, and today for the first time on RBR ever, I have the distinct pleasure of showing you a brand new Porsche right at the point of its worldwide release. It is the most powerful 911 ever other than the GT2 RS, or at least the top version of that car, and it is the new 992 Turbo S in cabriolet form. Now, the Turbo is a car that has struck fear into the hearts of super and hypercar owners ever since its inception in 1974. In this new car, it only raises the bar higher. So without further ado, let us explore together this new 992 Turbo S Cabriolet. So guys, the history of the 911 Turbo is one that is vast, and it is a car that is an automotive icon, perhaps like no other from any manufacturer. It's not only a car that's been revised 7 times in the last 40 years, but it's a car that's left its mark on popular culture with us as well, appearing in things like Bad Boys and even Batman. So to really give that car justice, in the coming months, we're going to do a full review, including the full history of the Turbo when we review the Turbo S Coupé. But for today, with the Cabriolet, what you really want to know is how does it differ to its previous version, and what benefits do you gain from having the chopped roof, and what do you lose from having that roof as well. So let's get straight to it and look at the previous car, which is the 991.2 Turbo S Cabriolet. Now this is a car that was by no means a slouch. 572 brake horsepower, 700 Newton meters of torque, and a very conservative official figure of 2.9 seconds 0 to 60. So we've got more horsepower than most of the GT product already, and we've got a 0 to 60 time that's already nipping at the heels of cars that have a prefix of hyper. So the natural question at this point is, where do you go from here to improve a car like this? And the natural answer should always be, ask your customer. Now, if I asked you guys, and indeed I would probably give the same opinion about the Turbos, is that they are, yes, extremely fast cars, but a lot more on the side of mile crunching rather than being driver-focused cars. And if we wanted a driver-focused 911, we would either choose something like a GTS or go straight to GT product. Luckily, Porsche are in the good habit of listening to their customers. So Dr. Walliser and his team have worked exceedingly hard with this, the brand new 992 Turbo S, to try and bridge that gap between the previous car, which was extremely fast but luxurious, and cars like the GTS and the GT products. And already on the face of it, if you look at it as a layman, it looks that much more aggressive. They've really amped the design up, particularly I feel on the front end, and we'll get more into design later. But before you even get into the ins and outs of what they've done, just on the face of it, it looks like a different product to the Carrera, which I can't say about the other modern 911 Turbos. Now, of course, this is a Turbo, so we must first talk about the power. 650 PS in this small car, guys. 800 Newton meters, and again, a very conservative 0 to 60 of 2.8 seconds when it's been easily tested at 2.5 or less. This is crazy figures. We're talking like Aventador SVJ or even Bugatti territory, particularly on the 0 to 60. And another metric that you're going to love, 0 to 200 km is a second quicker than the previous car. These speeds are unbelievable. Some basic things that have been added include a much more sportier suspension, again, to bridge that gap. We've also, for the first time ever, got a sports exhaust system for the Turbo S, which replaces the typical turbo quad pipes with the oval ones. A bit of a shame, we're going to go on to that later, but what it does do is actually sound really bloody good, and you'll see that on the run later as well. Now, if you have the Coupe, Dr. Walliser has given you another package later this year that you can get, and that is the lightweight package. Now again, this is all about bridging the gap between Turbo and GT. With this package, you get a load of the sound insulation removed, much like in GT product. The rear bench goes, you get 2 bucket seats, you get lighter glass as well, and other changes to the chassis in order to make it that much more driver focused. So as you'd expect, the Turbo derives all the benefits from the standard 992 series within it. For example, one feature that I really liked was how the front wheel arches essentially have ears that pick up whether the road is wet and then help with the wet mode of the car. Also, the majority of the car is built using aluminium rather than steel, so generally the weight is very, very similar to the previous car, as well as the actual size, although the Turbo has grown where the Carrera S has not, and we'll get into that later. What I'm more interested in talking about with turbo is how does it produce that much more power and how does it deal with the cooling? So this engine, it is still derived pretty much from 991, though Porsche call it all new. That means it is loosely still somewhat related to that wonderful GT2 RS, which is great news for us and a great starting point. Now, although most 911s are now turbos, with the turbos are the most important part. So in this car, we've got larger VTG turbochargers, which are in a symmetrical shape. So not the same part used twice, two separate parts in symmetry, working in tandem together in a more efficient way. That is done alongside an electronically controlled wastegate system, which reacts that much faster, alongside, again, piezo injectors as well. We've got an exhaust manifold derived from GT2 RS, again, learning coming in from that car. But what's really interesting for me is aspiration, and you see all the vents and holes around the Turbo S. For a lot of car manufacturers, these vents are often just fake and decorative or something alluding back to previous design. With Porsche, every vent they have serves a purpose. The most interesting ones on the turbos are always the big ones on the rear wheel arches. These intakes on the rear wheel arches work in tandem with the large grille on the rear boot lid, giving an overall larger area to suck air in and 4 different areas to bring air in to cool the engine as well. All of this is key when we've got such a high power output in the Turbo S. And if you're wondering how much of that power goes to the front, well, you can take up to 500 Newton meters to the front wheels. Now, when it comes to engineering, as I said, so much is linked to design. We've also got active air panes within this wider front end here, which either close for more fuel efficiency or can open up to bring in more air and again, help aerodynamically. Now, speaking of design, this is a super important part for me as a potential customer as well, because whenever I looked at the previous Turbo S's in the modern generations, they just didn't look different enough to the standard Carrera. Case in point is the 991.2. If we compare that to the standard Carrera or even the GTS, I think the GTS looks better on the front, whereas the Turbo S looks too much like a normal Carrera S. Now, my test for the new 992 is to compare it to the standard Carrera S, and when I do that, this looks so much more aggressive to me. You've got the wider front end, which is 45 millimeters wider, and the wider rear, which is 20 millimeters wider on the rear. Track is wider on the front too at 42 millimeters, but generally you've got a different design on the lower end, a much wider stance, and it all actually now looks more supercar-like in its stance, which is something I never would have said about turbo before. Suddenly, when you're spending that much more on this car, you're actually getting something for it. That mixed with the lovely alloy options that you get, and you get a staggered setup this time, 20s on the front, 21 on the rear with wider tires. We'll see how that works later on. Overall, you've just got a much more aggressive look, and aggressive is not something that I would have called a Turbo S in recent past. We've got an extra aero feature just under the front bumper here, which is marked Turbo S as well. We've got wider side sills, which the normal Carrera doesn't have, again accentuating that wideness of the car. Of course, you've got all the retro cues that I love in this car on the bonnet in terms of the sculpting there carrying over from 993. And then when you look at the rear, again, the width really helping this. You've got the lovely grille of the 992 series, which is a bit more aggressive. It's almost like an AMG grille without the Mercedes-Benz star in it. The wing, very aggressive when it's out, more sedate when it's folded inside. You've got the exhaust system, first time, sport exhaust. I'm annoyed that when you option that, you only get the choice of the oval pipes because the quad ones are more turbo in nature to me in terms of their design. But overall, a really aggressive looking turbo car. There's also a sport design package option, which increases that aggression, and I'll go into that in a minute. First of all, we need to talk about the roof because this video is all about the Cabriolet. Now, since the 991 series, unlike the turbos of the past, which ended up having a different roof line for the Cabriolets, thus ruining the more svelte shape of their coupe counterparts, since 991, the Cabriolets have had the exact same roof line as the coupes. It's no different here in the 992. You look at the side shot, you've got the exact same profile as the coupe, so you lose nothing design-wise. The hood itself is a fabric top, and you may dismiss it because of that, but when you sit inside the car, the finish and the thickness and the noise insulation seems as good as coupe, so you lose nothing in that sense. And of course, then you get a choice of colors in the fabric top as well. It takes only around 10 seconds to fold in and can be done while driving as well. I love the look of it. as it closes. I love the whole mechanism as it's closing. And when it's actually fully closed, I like the fact that the fabric itself is not flush with the metalwork. You get this nice little gap in between the two, which to me adds a bit of character and shape overall to the side profile and any angle that you look at that rear. Indeed, when you look at the rear, again, it accentuates the width of the Cabriolet versus the normal coupe. Again, a big plus if you're going for the cab. As far as noise with the roof down, with the wind deflector up, you'll see when I drive hard later how well it reduces the noise. Now the roof does add about 60 kg to the normal coupe weight, but the other thing it adds is something intangible, and that is a whole sensory experience versus the coupe that brings in bits of GT2 for me. And I want you to wait and see what that is like. Now, as I mentioned, you can also get a sports design package for both coupe and cabriolet. And this adds more aggression to an already more aggressive turbo. So firstly, you've got different gloss black trims and pieces around the car to accentuate certain parts of the design. You'll notice firstly, in the front bumper, you've got more aero features on the side. You've got gloss black in the middle. Your side sills are now gloss black as well. You've got different finish on the wheels. I think it's a bit more obvious on the rear of the car where your lower diffuser is different. You've got a different shaped wing with raised ends and a gloss black feature as well. If you go for the coupe, you also get a carbon roof. There's allegedly different rear lights in the sports design package, but I can't find any picture where it differentiates it from the normal one. Here's the press shot, make of it what you will. So guys, now for the moment of truth. We've got a 650 brake horsepower cabriolet, 2 and a bit seconds 0 to 60, the open road, COVID-19 hair. Let's see if Dr. Wallace and his team have managed to up the emotion and driver engagement in this new Turbo S Cabriolet. So guys, I have got the case of COVID hair, as most of us do, having stayed in lockdown for so long. So I asked the Porsche press team to get me a cap, and they got me this little beanie, which kind of makes me look like a giant condom. So I can't use that. Thank you guys. I'm gonna instead revert to looking like a drug dealer with the hoodie on. Now, first thing on Turbo S, regardless of coupe or cab, has to be that insane 0 to 60 figure. So we are going to start with launch control right now. Whoa! I'm already at 100, 120, wow. Okay. I mean, look, GT2 RS was extremely quick here on these same roads. I told you guys how afraid I was of that car. But it's another level when you've got almost as much horsepower, 650 in this versus the 700-ish that the GT2 had, but you've got four-wheel drive and you haven't got even a millisecond of any slip. The car just rockets forward, much like you'd see in a top-level Bugatti. And it's at any point, the car will just deliver. Oh my God. And I think what I'm really feeling here is that torque figure as well, of the 800 Newton meters. It's nothing to sniff at. I mean, we've tried some really powerful cars here, like the DBS as well, with its 900 on Newton meters. This feels even more because we've got a much lighter car, a much smaller body, but a much quicker car as well. And if I slow it down a little, let's get down to 40 miles an hour and give it a kick again. There is nothing that's going to give you that kind of rapid acceleration that I've ever driven anyway. Taking into account all the GT product that we've driven here, every other car that we've driven, this has to be the fastest thing that I've ever had on these roads. And you know what makes it feel faster? Not having a roof. It is so addictive. Holy shit. Holy shit. So reminiscent of the GT product in terms of the sheer speed you get out of this car. Right now, I'm just trying to digest how fast this feels versus the GT product. And indeed, I think it's quite important that we talk about how it differs to the normal Carrera S, which we found, despite having just 450 brake horsepower, still felt really quick. But this is on another level altogether when it comes to speed. We've got a massive addition of horsepower in this car versus the Carrera S. We've got that much more torque, which is so significant, as I said. And the result is a completely different experience. And now I feel, whereas the previous car was quite similar to the 4 and the 4S, this seems that much further along the line towards GT products. Now it's a pretty nice day today. I'd say it's about 16 degrees, the sun is out. It's about as good as it's going to get in Britain, and having the roof open, having the world accessible plus, we all know what the thrill of a cabriolet is like, and you've got the thrill of a cabriolet here mixing with the thrill and speed of a GT product Porsche car. But if I shift the car then into comfort mode, you've also got really compliant suspension. If I put the roof back up, which I'm not going to because I'm having too much fun, the roof, as we said, just looks like the coupe roof from inside the car. And the sound deadening is just like in the coupe. So you've got this whole element of comfort that you don't find in cars that are as fast as this. So I'm not just juggling a duality of, say, a fast car and a comfortable car like a lot of performance cars. I'm instead juggling three things. I've got speed that is up there with GT product. I've got comfort that is up there with the standard 911, but I've also got access to all of the elements. So we've got three major factors that you don't normally find in one car. Now I want to talk about sound a little. As we found in Carrera S, the loudest mode is actually Sport, not Sport Plus. Sport Plus is more efficient. Now listen to this. Listen to that. Why can't other manufacturers do this? That is, I think, at least twice the volume of the Carrera S with sports exhaust. There's a definite difference in the type of tune that this is playing. This is a lot more aggressive. It's a lot less sedate than the Carrera S. I would definitely recommend that you compare the two together, because this is probably one of the best sounding modern cars with all the OPF and regulations that they have to deal with that I've driven recently. Listen to that, just coming to a standstill. Bloody brilliant. How good is this car? All the pops and bangs that you could ever want out of a car. And remember, it's an engine related to the GT2 RS, so you get a bit of that warble, a bit of that scream. Yes, it's very turbocharged. That's exactly what you want out of a Turbo S. I really love the sound. It hits all the right notes for me. It's got the pops and bangs, it's got the rev build up, it's got the screaming element. Then you've got an awesome gearbox that shifts exactly when you want it to, all together. And of course, the roof is down, so I'm hearing that much more coming out of this car than I would in the coupe. Now, having a really fast car is not something that uncommon. Yes, this is super fast, but what makes Porsche really stand out is the handling element that goes along with the speed. We found that handling element, certainly with the normal 992 and the Carrera S, just how the steering, the ability to put power out of a corner, despite being this rear-wheel drive, was magical. It was a car that multiplied your confidence after each corner, and to be honest, didn't really seem lacking in speed. I felt it was one of the fastest cars that we've driven here, but now we've got a car of the same model, that much more powerful. What's this going to feel like? Now, yes, I'm getting flashbacks of how brilliant and indeed how easy it is to drive the 992 series fast, but unlike the Carrera S, we've got four-wheel drive, we've got that much more horsepower, and it's like everything's been dialed up by a factor of 10. Now we know that a lot has been changed in terms of the handling for Turbo S specifically. The new PASM system, like a lot of the best new suspension systems in cars these days, controls the dampening of the car within milliseconds, allowing for super fast changes depending on what the car and the wheels are doing. This is all controlled by a precision valve that allows that much more control per wheel, but Porsche have also imbued the Turbo S with more breadth of ability than before, meaning It's that much more comfortable when you go into comfort, and that much more firm and rigid when you put things into Sport Plus. And what you end up with is a car that was more comfortable than before, but also more close to GT than it was before. The steering, as we found in 992, as we found in all the 991 cars as well, despite being an electronic rack, feels very, very much like the old hydraulic systems. So much feeling, so much feedback coming through the wheel itself. Sometimes when you're driving daily, you almost get too much from small steering inputs, which is really quite interesting. But as soon as you get in tune with how much the wheels are turning, you can really fine-tune what you're doing with the front end, which is lovely. For example, when you're coming out of a corner, not only have you got massive power, you've got the grip to match that power. Again, not a lot of performance cars of this speed have both power and the ability to deliver that power to tarmac. I think a lot of the credit will go to the new wheel sizes and wider tyres as well, specifically for Turbo S, just to get more contact on the ground, and it really works. I wager I could destroy any other car that we've tested here, apart from the GT product, with this car. It is immense, immense. Now if we put the car back into normal mode, just touching back on that idea of a daily car, it comes down to quite a few elements. We've got the suspension, which, as we said, the new PASM system has that much more breadth of ability, so it's that much more comfortable when I'm just driving normally, and I really, really feel that. Compared to GT product that we tried here, and I mentioned how tired you feel after driving those fast, I don't feel tired at the moment. I feel really relaxed, I feel really comfortable, and that is because this car is wired differently in its PASM system to allow that breadth of ability that the GT product does not have. So genuinely it feels like I'm driving near on a Carrera S 911. But for a family man like me, unlike GT product, I've got two tiny seats in the back which will fit my 1-year-old and my 10-year-old. It's more value added, it's more breadth of ability. But then unlike the Coupe, you've got the ability to give yourself unlimited headroom and access to the elements, which you cannot discount as being a massive, massive fun factor, both in just enjoying your driving and getting that much more sound out of the engine. So in conclusion, rather than dealing with the typical duality of a performance car of speed plus comfort, this Turbo S Cabriolet has got so many sides of its personality. Yes, we have the hypercar speed. Yes, we have the ability to use a hypercar daily. Yes, we have a car that can still be a track toy and handle really well, and we have a car that has access to the elements. Now this is a combination that is in some way going to please everybody. Now is the cost of it high? Of course it is. But is it really? When you've got hypercar power that can be used as a daily, that gives you access to the elements and can still be a track toy, and I can get my kids in the back, it's got to be the best bargain performance car in the world, surely. So guys, I hope you really enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed driving it for a few hours on this one day. I hope you get it back longer. If you have enjoyed, please do like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, give us more opportunities with other manufacturers as well to entertain you. The more you like, the more you subscribe, gives us those opportunities. I've got a few hours left, and you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have some fun. See you guys.